Hello everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Royal Blue Podcast. My name is Joe Thomas, I'm the Echo's Everton FC correspondent, and alongside me I've got my colleagues Paul Wheelock, our Merseyside women's football writer Beth Lindop to talk about the derby yesterday, and of course regular contributor Gavin Buckland. How are we all getting on, folks? You right?
Yeah,
Celebrating an Everton victory.
Yeah.
Happy days. At Anfield, yeah.
Yeah, well, that very much feels the best place to start, I think. Beth, obviously you were there covering this for the Echo, and I think you wrote the headline. It was something along the lines of everything that I want to be writing in a couple of days' time when the men's team goes to Anfield. Was it Blues dancing in delight in Anfield after a win?
Evertonians celebrating on the Kop. It was something along those lines, but yeah, a massively deserved win for Everton yesterday. I was pleased for them because obviously I cover both Merseyside clubs from the women's side of things, and you know, Everton have had a tough start to the season, and I think sort of last season they were a joy to watch at times. They were great, and you know, the season prior to that they'd had a really disappointing campaign. They'd finished 10th. They'd sacked 2 permanent managers, and just the whole mood around the club didn't feel particularly great. And then they bring Brian Sorensen in last summer, and it felt like a breath of fresh air. You know, they had an overhaul of the playing squad, and you know, it just felt like they finished 6th last season, and it felt like they were very much sort of a side that could be in the ascendancy and pushing for sort of top 5, top 4. And then they lose the first 2 games of this season against opposition who they probably should be beating in Brighton and Hove Albion and Leicester City, albeit Leicester have actually started really well this season. But you know, it felt like, you know, the stars were aligning for Liverpool to get one over on them at Anfield. Liverpool had won the first 2 games of the season, so it felt like it was the prime moment for Liverpool to sort of break their Anfield hoodoo against Everton, because actually on the women's side of things, Everton have won all 4 of the Merseyside derby encounters in the women's game. So it felt like coming into the game that Everton were very much sort of the underdogs, but I think they almost relished that a little bit. I spoke to Meg Finnegan, the captain, last week, and she said, I think the pressure is on Liverpool, and I think maybe that sort of told during the, you know, certainly after the first 10-20 minutes when Liverpool started brightly, you know, Everton sort of sucked all of the energy out of them really, and yeah, a deserved win. It was Meg Finnegan who did it again, wasn't it? I mean, how pleased were you for her, bearing in mind, obviously, you know quite well, you've been speaking to her earlier on in the week. Yeah, delighted for her. She's someone who, you know, knows the club inside out, has been there since the age of 9. She knows more than anyone what it means to win a Merseyside derby, and her leadership skills, the amount of effort that she puts in on and off the pitch. I think Brian Sorensen said, you know, she's the one who sets the standards in the Everton dressing room, so I was delighted for her to get that winning goal. I mean, when I spoke to her last week, she said being club captain now, it hurts more than usual when they lose games, and you could really tell it was weighing her down a little bit that they'd had such a disappointing start. So, you know, it was nice for her to get on the score sheet and get the win. I mean, I think, you know, I spoke to Matt Beard after the game last night, and he wasn't very happy with some of the officiating in the game. Liverpool had what looks to be a legitimate goal chalked off for offside early on. But I think on the balance of the game, you know, Everton totally deserved it. I think defensively they were excellent. Liverpool didn't really create an awful lot. But yeah, pleased for Brian Sorensen and pleased for Meg Finnegan. Yeah, especially in that second half, with the exception of maybe the last 5-10 minutes when the game became a little bit more frantic. I thought Everton were very kind of mature and quite authoritative at the back. It really was a very good performance, wasn't it? Paul, you were one of those Blues who was dancing on the Kop.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Less so me myself, but certainly my 2 sons were dancing at the end. It was. You know what? The whole day was excellent. I've been to Everton women's games before at Walton Hall Park, but that was my first one at either Goodison or Anfield, and it was you could tell for a lot of people, not just Everton but certainly Liverpool support as well, it was the first experience of a top flight game. It is the behind enemy lines for Everton supporters, but it is a fantastic setup there. There's no question about it. And the game, as Beth was rightly described, and Joe, what you touched on there, for Everton were excellent. You know, the first 10 minutes they could have gone under. Sounds like they may have slightly fortuitous decision going in their way. Liverpool hit the bar. But then, once Everton found their feet, I thought they controlled the game really well. And in the second half, you know, certainly in the last 15 to 20 minutes, when Liverpool had made subs and had to try and push for an equaliser, Everton could easily have come away as, you know, scoring a second or third goal. And then obviously at the end they had the 6 minutes addition time, and it was probably the one time I was really nervous in the game, because I've had plenty of experiences over the years at Anfield where either winning or drawing, and there's always like a sting in the tail, and it did feel like the referee was going to play until Liverpool equalised, but it didn't turn out that way. But no, it was I thought I'm pretty sure both teams, Beth, you'll know better, have probably played better, but it was a really good advertisement for, you know, the Women's Super League, and for both teams, you know, 23,000 in attendance. I think hopefully it's going to become part of the course now, where each games are played at Goodison and Anfield, because it gets a lot of people who can't get to the game all the time to see some top class football. So yeah, where we were on the Cop, it was inadvertent, because the family who got us our tickets are Reds, so I'm pretty sure they didn't mean to sit us near all the Blues. But yeah, it was an interesting move by Liverpool. To, you know, Beth, you may know, you will know more, but it was like the corner of the Cop was the away end, and at the end, obviously all the players, Ryan's players, came over and celebrated in front of it. It was, it's a really good moment. Took photos of it. The scoreboard, the celebrations, one for posterity, definitely.
Absolutely. And Paul, you mentioned it there, obviously more than 20,000 people in attendance for that, Gav. I mean, it's great to see the game being supported so well, and those numbers grow. I remember being at one of the open training sessions at Goodison Park for the Everton women's team last season, and the numbers there weren't huge, but you could see it was a crowd that was new to football in some aspects, and one that was growing in terms of its enthusiasm for the game. Obviously, that was coming after the back of the success of the Lionesses, and it just really is nice to see. I remember walking away from Goodison after and just seeing granddads having pictures with their granddaughters and things like that. It's brilliant, isn't it?
Absolutely. It was the 50,000 at Arsenal the week for one of the games, wasn't it?
54,000 was the new WSL record.
You know, huge attendance. Yeah, I think they should be played at Anfield, and maybe our new stadium.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think, because it gives people. I mean, there's lots of Liverpool fans and probably to say the Everton fans who haven't got a chance to go there. To watch the men's game. So it's probably their only opportunity to actually go to the ground. Years ago, you went to reserves if you couldn't get a ticket. So yeah, I think they should be played there, and it's one of the success stories, isn't it, of British sport over the last decade, isn't it? The growth of women's football and the coverage it gets, and it just needs to be maintained, and not just necessarily off the success of the national team. And in other words, if that stopped, then people lose interest. It has to, women's club football has to be a standalone lead, doesn't it? That has to, support itself really. And it gets lots of coverage, but I think like a lot of things, it needs money. Like a lot of things to develop, these things need money, don't they? And you would like to think that in future there will be more money available to grow the game. And as we've seen in the national team, the Lionesses, it's huge. International, isn't it? Really, it's an event, isn't it? In England, women's football game, in a major tournament, as we've seen over the last couple of years, and it's pleased to see. It's just it's a different angle, isn't it? It's not. I mean, I've been watching football more than 50 years, and it's another angle on football, isn't it? It's another, that's the good thing. And it was just, is the atmosphere different to a men's game? When you said about the crowds yesterday and standing on the Cop, I know it's like only half the crowd for Derby. Is it a different atmosphere? Is it?
What it reminded me of, like, I went to watch my son, obviously, two sons were mad into football, and we went to watch England against North Macedonia at Old Trafford in the summer, and it reminded me of that. It was because it was so led by young people, like most people had young children there, and that naturally changes the atmosphere anyway. Maybe what I would imagine at most top flight English games is probably mainly male elder led still in terms of like demographics. But it was quite interesting because I was having that debate. It was, even though it was well natured at the end when the Everton fans coming over, they were getting booed. The players were getting booed. Yeah. There was two kids behind my lads in the full Liverpool kits going, "The city is still red. The city is still red." So it still had that. It was not quite as antagonistic as probably the men's Premier League games, but there was still that rivalry there. Don't worry, when the goal was disallowed there were boos, and when Everton players were over in that corner warming up and things like that, there's still that rivalry there. But I think what what changed it for me was just how family led it was, really. I don't know if that's like at every game. When I've been to Alton Hall Park, it's been like that, but obviously it was on a bigger scale yesterday.
Yeah, I think women's football is maybe at a little bit of a crossroads at the moment, because I think, you know, it is so sort of family orientated. It has been sort of in the last few years, and that's great. And as you touched on there, you know, it's far more accessible than the men's game, so it's a great chance to get young boys, young girls down for the first sort of taste of top flight action. So you know, you want to retain that. And I also think, you know, in the Premier League now, there's so much vitriol and so many sort of bad habits that the men's game has got, that you don't necessarily want to transfer over to the women's team. So, you know, you do want to maintain that sort of family element, but also, you know, no game of football is complete without a little bit of needle, is it, and a bit of rivalry. So I think, you know, that you see certain fan bases, particularly sort of the London clubs, actually sort of the Arsenals and Chelseas that are really well supported. A lot of the older fans get quite frustrated because they'll get, you know, parents turning around and tutting when they swear, or, you know, things like that, things in the men's game that, you know, it is by the by, you know, it is sort of frowned upon sometimes in the women's game. So I think it's now about sort of striking that balance between keeping the family atmosphere but also incorporating that rivalry.
Beth, where obviously you watched them last season and that as well, where do you think Everton's ceiling is this season? Because it feels like with the Women's Premier League, obviously you have some absolute juggernauts in Arsenal and Chelsea, perhaps similar to how you do in the men's game, where you have a couple of clubs at the very top of the game and then a bit of a bum fight to try and catch up with them. How much can Everton do this season? What would be a good season for this side? I
think they finished 6th last season, so I would say if they finish 5th this season, that's a really good season. And I think it is so difficult because the top 4 is almost sort of impenetrable, really. Like you look at the clubs up there, you've got Chelsea who are bidding to win the title for a 5th consecutive season, which is, you know, is crazy level of dominance, really. Arsenal, obviously, a well-established women's team, and then both Manchester clubs have had so much investment in the past 5-10 years that, you know, they're like up there at the very top now as well. So it's very difficult. It feels like teams outside of that top 4, and I include Liverpool in this as well, despite the fact that Liverpool obviously are a juggernaut on the men's side of things. You know, on the women's side, they're still having to almost battle for best of the rest, really, because they've not managed to catch up in investment terms. I think, you know, Brian Sorensen, one of the sort of last season, one of the things I found really telling, I remember being sat in a press conference with Brian, and he said, he was talking about an Arsenal loanee that Everton had a winger called Gio, and Arsenal had asked for her to go back in January because she wasn't getting an awful lot of game time, and Brian said, you know, we didn't have to let her go contractually, but we want to work with Arsenal again on future loans, and that's where we are in the food chain. And the word food chain really made me think, and, you know, I don't think anyone at Everton is under any illusions about where they do stand in the pecking order in the WSL in terms of finances and you know, the money that they've got at the disposal. So I think it would be a real challenge for them to try and get into that, because as well in the women's game there's only 3 European spots as well, so it's not even a top 4, it's a top 3. So to try and, you know, you'd have to oust one of the Manchester clubs or Arsenal or Chelsea, which is a really big ask. So I'd say probably this season, if they could aim for 5th, I think that would be a really positive season. And then, you know, I think Brian Sorensen's a really good manager. I think he's got some great young talent there, and I think, you know, if they were to strike upon sort of the right combination of young talent and experience in the next couple of seasons, then maybe they could push for a European place. I think that might be just slightly beyond them for this season. Yeah.
Who would you say is one to watch out of those younger players? Obviously, we've got some well-established names like Tony Duggan, and obviously, you know, Meg Finnegan, now the captain, 2-time scorer of a winning goal at Anfield.
They've got a young Danish player in, she's only 18, Caroline Olsen, and Brian, ahead of the season, said she's one of the most talented players to come out of Scandinavia in the last 10 years, which is a big claim. I don't think we've really seen the best of her yet. She came off the bench yesterday. So I think she's definitely one to watch. I think, you know, defensively they've got some really good players. They've got Elise Stenovic, who's a young, sort of very versatile defender, can play pretty much all over the back line. They've got Emily Ramsey, who's a young goalkeeper, England international as well. So they've got a lot of young talent coming through, and I suppose it's just about, you know, when you have a young team, naturally you're going to have good days and bad days, aren't you? And I think in a way that's why what they did yesterday was so impressive, because it was a young team and they weren't overawed by the occasion. They weren't overawed by the fast start that Liverpool made. So I think that there's definitely a high ceiling to this team, but I think they will have good days and bad days while they're sort of still, some of the players I think are still learning on the job in terms of the WSL, but definitely wanted to keep an eye on over the course of the season.
Yeah, that's really fascinating insight. Thanks very much for coming on.
No, thank you for having me.
Transition now from one derby to the next. Obviously, next Saturday, the lunchtime kickoff. Paul, I know we're in the middle of an international break. I know we haven't quite started up the treadmill of pre-derby activity with the press conferences and players coming back and all sorts, but I mean, are you casting your mind that far in advance yet, or are you actually just enjoying the calmness of a week and a half without Everton and a week and a half on the back of an Everton win?
Yeah, a bit of both. Basking in the glory of that win over Bournemouth and trying not to think about the derby until about 12:44 on Saturday, to be honest, given our recent and, well, not so recent unfortunately anymore, past experience at Anfield. It's just taken the pressure off, hasn't it? As you've been writing this week, Joe, one win certainly does not make up for the disappointments of the 3 home losses that we've had this season. But if we would have been going into the derby on the back of a defeat or maybe even a draw against Bournemouth, I can imagine the pressure on Sean Dyche particularly would have been fairly sizable. And I hate using the word free hit, but because it's a Merseyside derby, but it makes it more of a free hit than it possibly would have been if we wouldn't have picked up the 3 points against Bournemouth. To be honest, I wouldn't say I'm dreading it, because I think Liverpool are an outstanding team, but I think they've proven this season that there are chinks in their armour. I'd say they've won the majority of games they've played, but in the majority of the games they've played, they've been behind. So I think there is hope for us there, but I don't think I'd be the only Evertonian to say it's going to be another tough test, really. That
dynamic of a potentially slow start in Liverpool and a Dyche Everton side, which if it does one thing is it starts games fast.
Yeah.
And in fairness to it, if they get the goal, they're normally pretty adept at holding on for something, aren't they? When you look at his track record at Everton so far, it's quite a compelling one going into the game, isn't it?
Yeah, and the counter to that, of course, if we go one down, then we find it difficult to drive points back, don't we? Yeah, I mean, what I'm looking for, and this is something Dyche's record, as you say, it's 2 distinct layers to it, isn't it? It's the teams, we've beaten teams you're expected to beat, and we've been competitive in games, even like where we've lost, say, Fulham and Wolves and stuff. You're expected to get points from, and we should have got something from those games, but by and large, the top 5, 6, 7, and I'm excluding Brighton from there. I'm talking about the traditional big 6. Our performance has been poor, I think. Under Dyche, we've barely laid the glove on Arsenal in 2 games, didn't we? City is always difficult.
Obviously, beat Arsenal in his very first game.
But the two subsequent games we played in the league, didn't we? At the Emirates and then home this season against City, always difficult. Liverpool at Anfield, we barely laid the glove on them. Man United. We were poor at Old Trafford.
Probably
as well.
More frustrating one, the fact that Man United were there to be got at as
absolutely.
well, and that was, I mean, the City win at Goodison towards the end of last season was comprehensive, but the Old Trafford Man United win, I mean, I know it was only 2, but it felt like that could have been that.
Well, it turned on the Sims, missed, didn't it? Really. Yeah. So I mean, I'm looking to be more to affect the game more against one of the big clubs, rather than just, as we saw it against Arsenal, be very passive and just get on the pitch and try and contain and just try and do something for the best when you had the ball. I'm looking for something, and I think the expectation is that at Anfield is that we could do something a bit more than we did against Arsenal, purely because I think Arsenal we developed probably a better team than Liverpool. And also I think, as you said, I think Liverpool have got weaknesses. You've seen them against Brighton the other week, and you've seen other games this season where they have been vulnerable as ever. You always think like that right channel, a right back, that space between Alexander-Arnold and the right centre half, which Brighton definitely targeted that area, didn't they? And they have conceded goals, and so You know, I'm a bit. I could replay this analysis every, you know, at the last like 20 years. You know what I mean? I think we could do something, you know, like I've Liverpool got their weaknesses, we've got some sense to capitalise on it, and then turn on the end, but we get beat 2-0. Like, you know, it's like just like a broken record, isn't it? Really, is you can big it up, but Liverpool, you know, I don't think they're as strong as what. I mean, probably got a lot of strength up front. But I don't think they are as strong as what they were, say, 17, 18, 19, 20. And
Robertson, of course.
Yeah, and injured, and Van Dijk's obviously had that injury. So, yeah, I wouldn't say they're there to be got at, but possibly a little bit more vulnerable at the back than what they have been in previous years. And it's good for us that actually we've got a couple of forward players in decent form.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, Calvert-Lewin looks fit, dare I say. Harrison has come in, been like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah,
I like McNeil.
Yeah.
I think he adds balance to the team. And we got a goal threat from Decore. So there's something there that maybe we could take advantage of. And you got to hope for the best. But I just want to come away thinking I don't want it to be like the Arsenal games. Just come, you know, there's no point in turning up there. You know, we have to affect the game. And by affecting the game, that means be competitive and offer something in attack. Don't just throw 10 men behind the ball and just when you've got it, lose it within a couple of passes.
Yeah, I mean, Paul, this game comes at quite an interesting time, bearing in mind what Gav says there. I know that Dyche was frustrated with the international break because by the end of the Bournemouth game, Everton had won 3 games in 4 in all competitions, so they obviously built a bit of momentum. But if Everton is to try and pose some sort of attacking threat, then actually this international break might have done them well. I mean, something that I've written about over the course of the past 10 days, it's probably for the first time, Sean Dyche has got his attacking front line 5, the one that he's going to have to base his season around, all fit and all available, all there to work together, none of them on international duty. You know, you've got Harrison back, immediate impact, obviously another fortnight for him to work on his fitness. Dwight McNeil again, impressive start since he came back, build on his fitness. Calvert-Lewin 3-3 before Bournemouth. And then obviously, you know, Beto's still around as well, and Arno Danjuma's there. So, you know, one of the questions I asked Dyche ahead of the Bournemouth game was how useful this fortnight might be, and he was very keen to almost go the other way and say, well, actually, you know, it's a bit of a myth that this is a useful fortnight because really you only get 2 days at the end of it when everyone's come back from international duty to actually work on anything strategic. I can understand this point to some extent. Obviously, you know, we know that he loses a chunk of his backline and some of his midfield, but having those 5 players there together, fit, available, build on relationships, work on some sort of strategy, I mean, that's got to be a good thing for it, surely, and surely that'll help going into a derby game against a Liverpool side, which isn't as strong at the back as it has been in previous seasons, which now has another issue to deal with because obviously Robertson's been injured and obviously has got far more players who have been away on international duty as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in our work experience, Brendan did a piece, I think, back last week saying it could be a bit of a blessing in disguise. I think there's only Sheffield United with less senior internationals away than Everton. I know they've got a number of youth players, including Bramthwaite, but I think maybe Dyche was just trying to play down expectations there, or just be typical Sean Dyche with the way back away questions at times. Yeah, I agree. We've got the vast majority of the squad there.
James Garner's there. He's been so is
it Mikolenko
as well?
And Arnold, who's been suspended, will he come back early now after getting sent off for Belgium over the weekend?
Patterson with Scotland, Pickford as well.
If he wants to work on shape this week, you can imagine certainly going forward. He's got the option to do that, and probably, and I know you wrote about it today with James Garner, Joe, but he's got really good options now. It's probably the best foot attacking options we've had in probably a good, you know, probably 2 or 3 seasons. And I'd argue, I know it's small in number, those kind of wide plays in attack, and we wouldn't want 1 or 2 injuries to hit us. But while they're all fit, he's got some really interesting choices to make, to be honest. And yeah, I, as Gav said, it's difficult because I think if we sit back and play like we did against Arsenal, like the Arsenal game, I seen that goal for the first time the other day. My son was watching some YouTube video, and it was a fantastic goal, by the way, by Trossard. I didn't realise just how good it was until seeing it back. I think if you do that to Liverpool, ultimately the quality will probably
kind
show.
of saw that 18 months or so ago, didn't we, under Lampard, when they held out for about 65, 70 minutes, but the game was only ever going one way.
The subs affected it that day, didn't it? You know, and Liverpool, I'm pretty sure, will have their main forwards available, maybe Gakpo, so they're going to have options. And it just feels like, whereas we've got a lot of players, not got a lot of players away on international duty, and we've had a lot of time to work with the squad. Liverpool have got a number of players away on international duty, and probably the biggest issue they'll have is the fact that they've got a number of South American players away on international duty, and I think it's better this time around than it was the last international break where they were playing Thursday AM or Wednesday AM, I forgot which it was, so I think it's Tuesday AM this time, so they will have a bit more time. But on the flip side, it's a 12:30 kickoff, isn't it? So I hope this time has been spent well, because I wouldn't say there's an opportunity, because I think we've just got to be realistic and say history doesn't suggest that we'll do so well, and we have to accept what kind of standard plays they've got. But I think we've got to go there, if not go all out. But let's test them. Jurgen doesn't seem to like the 12:30 kickoffs, doesn't he?
Beth, he doesn't like the 12:30 kickoffs. That's a subject of conversation before the international break.
Yeah.
I mean, how much of a big deal do you think it is for that Liverpool side, really?
I think it is definitely a factor and could play a part, particularly, as Wheeler said, with the amount of South American players that are coming back for Liverpool. I think Jurgen Klopp's frustration with it, hinges on the fact that Liverpool have, when you look at the statistics, have had way more than any other team in terms of those 12:30 kickoffs after international breaks. I think it's 14, I think Liverpool have had in Jurgen Klopp's tenure. I think the next closest side was Spurs with 6, so there is a massive disparity in terms of that. But I agree. I definitely think that Liverpool can be got at. I think they've shown that this season. I think actually if you look at the set piece, one thing I sort of, when I look at Everton, think of one of the biggest strengths is set pieces. I think they've got quality from the likes of McNeil, Harrison putting the ball into the box, and they've got some big players in there, especially now with Calvert-Lewin back. And you look at the way Liverpool defended some of those set pieces against Brighton the other week, it was horrendous. Brighton could have been about 3-0 up inside 15-20 minutes with the way the defending was. So I definitely think Everton have a chance. I think last year it was probably summed up sort of Everton's luck in Merseyside derbies in recent years, when Tarkowski hits the bar and then Salah races up the other end and scores straight away. And so I think if Everton were to go ahead, as much as Liverpool have been very good at coming from behind, I think if Everton got themselves in front and they had something to really cling on to, it could be a different game, and they could have a real opportunity. But I think 12:30 kickoffs should just be binned anyway. They're just rubbish, aren't they? No one wants to be sort of going for a pre-match pint at 10:30, do you really, before a game? But so it will be interesting to see how slow Liverpool start, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. One of the things you mentioned earlier was the pressure that's perhaps been alleviated on Dyche a little bit, having got that win against Bournemouth. One of the things I think is just we'll finish off our discussion today about this by looking at this next block of fixtures from a slightly wider perspective. Obviously, it's the 3 league games, and then it's the Carabao Cup game, and then it's the international break. How much... 3 very difficult games for Everton, I think it's fair to say. Obviously, Anfield, West Ham away, and Brighton at home. Three games which last season all represented probably Nadirs within Everton's a very, very difficult season. Obviously, Lampard got sacked after West Ham. It was the Brighton home game, which really was the kind of the moment I think everyone went, oh wow, this is we're in real trouble in January. And obviously the derby at Anfield was Dyche's first defeat. We lost some of the momentum from the Arsenal win. It's difficult trying to balance having a sense of reasonable perspective. Everton will go into each of those games as underdogs, with the fact that obviously Everton do need to take up points. They do still need to catch up on the points that they probably should have got in the bag from a favourable start to the season. What do you think represents a good little run for Everton in this period? And do you think that there is a scenario where the pressure could really start to grow on Dyche by the end of it, or do you think that really people probably just need to be sensible and go, even if it's a bad run of fixtures, just look at where Everton are at this present moment in time in comparison to those 3 sides, all in Europe, all in an upwards trajectory? How difficult do you think this next few weeks could get for everyone?
It could get very difficult, and while you're completely right in the sense at the end of it there's got to be a sense of perspective about where Everton are and where those other clubs are, but if we were to lose the 3 league games and get knocked out of the League Cup, then I think the pressure would really be on. As you rightly said there, the difficulty Everton have got at the moment, we're playing catch up, whereas I think it's fair to say we should be 7 points better off. Luton and maybe even 9 really. Certainly the Luton and Fulham games were there to be won, and Wolves, suppose you could probably say a 0-0 draw
even
wouldn't have
Sheffield
been.
United
Even Sheffield
felt
United,
like an alright point at the time, but is looking
since,
and
that's the issue we've got now. To get back onto level par or to get back where we should be, you're going to have to take points out of these kind of games coming up. I think if you're looking at the 4, as much as it pained me to lose another Merseyside derby at Anfield, if you said we would beat Brighton and beat Burnley at home and then were to lose the other 2, I'd probably I wouldn't willingly accept it, but I'd probably grudgingly accept that now, because I think it's important. I think people could recognise, as painful it'd be, losing at Liverpool and even West Ham now, because I think they're a really, really good side. I think people could accept that more. I think if we were to lose to Brighton at home and then to get out to the knocks out of the Cup on the back of the number of home losses that we've had, I don't think it'd go down well.
No, I mean, nature of performances matters as well, doesn't it, Gav? I think it's really... I remember when the draw was made, thinking that the Carabao Cup draw was actually quite favourable for Dyche, because albeit the league is clearly the priority this season, and I don't think anyone have any illusions over that. I think, however seriously or not seriously Dyche takes that game, Burnley will take it even less seriously, given their desire to stay in the Premier League. It perhaps gives Everton an opportunity not just to maybe get a win at Goodison Park in front of home fans at a time that might be a good difficult run of fixtures, but also when you look at the last 16 of that, there are 2 all Football League fixtures. There are a couple more Football League sides in there. A win over Burnley, it isn't beyond the realms of expectation to end up getting drawn against someone like Port Vale or Exeter for a place in the semi-final of a major cup competition, and that might that does help, doesn't it?
We get knocked out of Port Vale in the FA Cup when we were holders. Well, I mean, it's funny the way the draw is. You'd love it to split the draw into 2 halves, because all the big clubs at the top half of the draw, and we're at the bottom half of the draw, aren't we, with the Football League clubs? You can see we get in the semi-final, but it's not really being tested over 2 games. And I think it's good. It keeps the Carabao Cup, keeps people interested. It removes a stick to beat Dyche with, which I think from his perspective is important. And people can just say, we don't know, we could, as I say, look at the draw, and that's what you need now to win a major trophy in this country, don't you? You need to look at the draw, don't you? You're not gonna win a trophy by beating Man City, Liverpool, Man United in the last 3 rounds, with all due respect to Everton. You're going to win a trophy by a kind draw, and then maybe fluke in the final, a little bit like, say, Wigan. In 2013, imagine he had to play us away, and that was something a tough game. That Millwall, I think, in the semi-final, didn't he? Was it? Yeah. So, and then won't beat Man City. So that's the way you're going to win a trophy. And so what you've seen so far from us this season, now it could play out. We could get to the semi-final, and that could be the first. The hardest game. I know we play Villa away, but a semi-second string. And over 2 legs, you can go either way. So I think it's good. It keeps everybody's spirits up, doesn't it, when it's needed. As for the Dyche, I do get the style is important. I think you've got to show, like, that's what I said before, didn't I? Like, I don't want someone to say block a low block or whatever it's called, like we did against Arsenal. We've got to play some good stuff. I fancy results against West Ham. To be honest with you, I don't know why. I think sometimes they can be quite vulnerable. They've had some iffy results there over the years.
All 3 sides of this run in the league have got European fixtures to think about, either before or after. Or so.
And Brighton is the same. I think you'd be seeing a different Brighton than what we saw in January, because they are like stretched, and you've always got a chance. Though we love watching them play. They'll always give you the chance. Brighton, and they conceded the 2nd highest number of goals in the Premier League. So as we know, they can be got at, but they are great going forward. If Dyche is in problems, though, when it goes to the next international break, it won't be because of them 3 fixtures, it'll be because of the 3 or 4 games you've spoken about that we should have got from.
And do you think that a bigger danger across those 3 fixtures is less the results that Everton may or may not get, and perhaps what, say, Bournemouth or Burnley do in that period? Those 2 teams that you think are probably on the periphery of the relegation battle. Because it looks like Sheffield United and Luton, I know we can't write them off too soon, but you feel relatively confident Everton should have enough to finish above them from what we've seen so far.
Yeah.
Burnley and Bournemouth are slightly more unknown quantities. I mean, Bournemouth looked terrible, didn't they? But it's...
We've just beaten them 3-0 though, haven't we?
That's what I mean. Obviously they look terrible at Goodison Park.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But how many points are we ahead of the top?
We've got a little bit of a buffer now.
Is it 3? Is it?
It's 3, I think. Yeah.
So it's pretty conceivable that in 3 games' time you could still beat 3.
And that's it. I think that's kind of...
Then you're thinking about...
Almost a question that I'm asking in terms of perspectives a little bit, because it's less about how we might view a good haul of points from this game as Everton fans and from a wider Everton perspective, and more it might be about a season of just tracking about what good enough is enough. I think, given the circumstances. And
we said at the start of the season that if we stay up, it's probably going to be down to the poor teams, who relatively poor teams, and inexperienced teams in Premier League teams, how they do when they come up. And and I think we're 3 points ahead. Then I think that takes the pressure off. Yeah. The problem is if Burnley or somebody drag a couple of results out, I don't know what their fixtures are, and we're in and around the bottom 3, same as what we were this time last year, then it becomes a slightly different conversation. Especially as we've then got some big fixtures between. It's a nightmare, isn't it? Really?
Huge month, isn't it?
And you're looking at it and you're thinking, by Christmas we could have something like 12 points out of 18 matches, and still not be in the bottom 3.
Yeah.
Because I think 30 points will keep you up this year.
Yeah.
I think could be even late 20s could keep you up, and I think that's what we're hoping for. I think that's what informed I said before on the pod, that's informed our transfer activity. I think what's the bare minimum we can do to survive in terms of cash term. I think it's better result. I think the club's attitude is from my perspective is we'd rather finish 17th having spent nothing than finish 14th having spent 30 million quid.
Yeah, I get that, yeah.
And I think that's what our whole thing this year has just been, what was the bare minimum we can spend, because we know about the cash issues and stuff like that. And I think they may say, if we get 12 points from 18 games, I'm not in the bottom 3, but take that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think given all the flux out of the club, I know sound staff.
I mean,
as long as
5 minutes ago we were in the Carabao Cup final.
And still in the Carabao
reality.
No, but that is not beyond. It could be by Christmas you've got 12, 13, 14 points, because that means winning 2. You've got to win 2 games between now and Christmas and see the fixture list. That's a tough ask. And you could be in the Carabao Cup semi-final, but not in the bottom 3. And I think as long as we stay out of danger, then I think Dyche is all right, to be honest with you. Regardless, as long as performance is okay and we're competitive, I think he's okay. If he slips into the bottom 3, we know how poor those clubs are.
Yeah.
Then that's when the problem will happen. Which goes back to your point, really, Joe. It's going to be about what the people do, not us, isn't it, really?
I suppose other people that also includes the Premier League, of course, is that tribunal back end of this month. Although when we hear with the results of that and whatever the potential conclusions will be is a bit of an unknown. So.
And there's more murmurings at the moment about our financial status, isn't it, about what might happen in January if we need to generate cash, so that all plays into it. But if you just go on what we know at the moment, I think that's my view.
Stay away from the murmurs for the moment.
Yeah. We'll just concentrate on the Carabao Cup, in a bit of cash that way.
Dyche at Wembley. First silverware of his managerial career.
Yeah, it's written in the stars already, isn't it? But it's good though, isn't it? A cup run is important. It keeps everybody's spirits up. Gives somebody something to look forward to.
Everton statistician Gavin Buckland be in hospitality for a Carabao Cup final, do you think?
I'd like it if you want to plug that. Yeah, absolutely. But no, I think it's funny time at the moment, isn't it? Playing wise where we are and stuff and what's happening. I think it's could go lots of different angles to it, really. I think the rule set this season is slightly different to the previous seasons, isn't it? About what our expectations are.
Yeah, well, we've got a few more days of bliss away from the Premier League, haven't we, and to carry on living off the momentum that the Bournemouth win's given us. Until we start back with the Sean Dyche press conference on probably Thursday, might be Friday this week. We'll have to wait and see. But we've been the Royal Blue Podcast. Thanks very much for listening to us, and we'll be back with you at the end of this week.